Alright guys, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to solve one of the biggest problems, in my opinion, that many e-bike displays have. And that problem is, they show you the state of charge with a battery gauge. And some battery gauges, like this one, you can see it's got about 10 bars to represent the state of charge. So that's pretty good, 10 bars, but I see some e-bikes and the battery gauge has 4 bars. So it's showing you the battery in 25% increments, which isn't very useful. And it's hard to keep track of how many amp hours or watt hours of power you've actually used throughout a ride. And also, it doesn't display the voltage, right? So the voltage on these batteries is a much better indicator of the state of charge than a battery gauge, right? So in this video, I'm going to show you how we can add a little piece of electronics to your e-bike so that you'll have a much more accurate battery gauge, much more accurate way to measure the battery that you're using. And also it's going to show you some useful information like the voltage and stuff like that. So how can we do this? If your e-bike display is kind of limited and it's got like a battery gauge and there's no voltage readout, how can we add that to our e-bike? So this piece of electronics that we're going to want is called a watt meter, right? And so first of all, you're going to want to make sure that the watt meter that you get is going to be compatible with your e-bike's electrical system, right? So we can see here that in the specifications for this watt meter, it's saying it operates from 8 to 60 volts. So this thing will work for a 52 volt battery, right? Because a full charge on a 52 volt battery is 58.8, and that's under the 60 volts. So this will work up to 52 volt batteries. It's a 200 amp watt meter, so that means this watt meter can handle 200 amps of current going through it, and that is a lot more than the 25 amps that the controller on my 750 watt bike uses. So this watt meter should work great for my e-bike, right? It's the right voltage, it's a high enough current rating. So how does this thing work? You get this watt meter, right? And it comes in this box, and then, so when you get the watt meter, it's just gonna have unterminated wires on the end of it, right? And you're gonna have to solder or crimp some kind of electrical connectors onto the ends of these unterminated wires. In my case, I've already soldered some XT60 connectors on here. This is what these yellow things are. So there's a female XT60 that I've got on the load side, right? So that's the motor controller. And then on the source side, I've got the male XT60 connector that would plug into the battery. And that's usually going to be the case. Your source, right? Or your source, the battery, it's usually going to have a female connector on it, like this one over here, right? Because that's going to be the safer connector to have on that battery. So to connect over here on our source side, we want a male XT60 that's going to plug into the female XT60 on my battery, right? And then over on the load side, I've got a female connector, and this is going to go to the DC power wires on our motor, right? So the first thing I'm going to do here, you kind of have to make a choice where you want to put this thing on your bike, and there's kind of two ways you can do it. You can either mount it somewhere that's visible, you know, like up on your handlebars or something. Or you can mount it a lot closer to your battery where it's going to be harder to see. And so what I did over here on this bike is I do like to see these things as I'm riding my bike. So it's got this whole bunch of wire going down here, down to the motor. And then it's got a whole bunch of wire over here that connects to my backpack battery. So there's kind of a lot of slack here, and I can kind of move this thing around. It's got some Velcro on the back of it. I used to just Velcro it right here. But the way that I have it right now, it's kind of, this particular one is kind of wired so that it's got a little extra bit of length, and I can move the watt meter around and like connect it into a backpack battery and stuff like that. So I'm just coming over here to the bike that I want to put this watt meter on, and I think, okay guys, so on this bike, I don't think I'm gonna try and put this on the handlebars because this DPC 18 display already shows the voltage, and it shows the power level that you're currently using. So really, the main advantage that this thing is going to bring on this bike is it's going to be a better battery gauge, right? It's going to be able to tell you exactly how many amp hours or watt hours you've consumed while riding your bike, so that you have a better idea of what state of charge the battery is in. I don't know if I can stuff it back in there somewhere or where exactly I'm going to put it. Alright, so now you can see on the battery connector, I've soldered on the XT60 female. So our battery's been upgraded to XT60. and that'll allow us to get the watt meter in line between the battery and the motor. Alright, so I've converted the battery to an XT60 female connector, and then my motor has an XT60 male. That should allow me to plug the motor in as the load on the watt meter. As long as our connectors are right, I can just plug that in. And then we're going to connect the source male connector to the battery. And then when we turn the battery on, we should get a readout on the watt meter. Alright, so it shows about 54 volts, so it's a fully charged 48 volt battery. So I'm going to get these wires tidied up a little bit and then ride it around, and I can show you how it tracks the power consumption. Alright guys, so I got the watt meter on the bike, and I'm just gonna ride around a little bit, go pick up some food, and then once I get done, we'll be able to see all of the stats on the watt meter. So I'm just gonna do a time lapse of this ride quick, and then I'll show you the stats. Oh. Alright guys, so we just got back. I went 6 miles exactly. If we look down here on the watt meter, we can see that it's showing us the current voltage, 26 amps peak, 49.53 volts minimum, 1247 watts peak, and I use 4.075 amp hours. So that is why you want a watt meter.